Let's get it. This is the Back Row Bengals show. Thank you so much for coming on. This is brought to you by fansided.com. And if you go there right now, you'll see something that just got put out. It's my first official blog on fansided.com. Goes over the weekend, talks about the Bearcats and the Bengals. So it's a good one. Go over to the Bengals side of Fansided and you'll find it right there. Today on, I have somebody who has been on, I'm pretty sure, every single podcast that I have ever created or ever been on. He's always been a guest. He's one of the reasons why I got into the podcasting game. My friend and yours, Mo Egger. Mo, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Wow, that is high praise.
Oh,
Typically
yeah.
they just say, "Hey, Mo's here," so no, thanks for having me.
Well, you absolutely deserve it. So before
Yeah.
we get into the travesty that was Sunday, I want to start out with a high note. I have to. Bearcats last night ranked number 5 in the playoff committee poll. Something I
Yeah.
was not expecting. I was expecting to stay at 6, maybe even a move down to 7, but the path sort of even became more clear to me too. If they stayed at 5, and I was really impressed by that. What was your initial thought when you
I
saw
thought they
5?
were going to somehow hold steady. So
Mhm.
I was pleasantly surprised. I think it would have been really interesting to see how things would have played out had Oklahoma played and won. And
Mm.
I still really worry about them because I have a hard time believing that an unbeaten team from the Big 12 that wins its conference championship isn't going to make the Final Four. But yeah, I mean, they they weren't as myopic as I think a lot of people thought that they were going to be and say, well, Cincinnati struggled to beat Tulsa, barely beat Tulsa, so what we're going to do is dock them. They didn't do that. They did what you would expect to happen if they were in a Power 5 league. A team in front of them lost. They dropped that team. Cincinnati moved up.
Mhm.
I don't know that the formula we've seen them use over the last 3 games is necessarily going to work over the final few weeks in which they sort of screw around and let a team that's not very good hang around. But yeah, it told you that Saturday did not, in a vacuum, did not hurt their chances, and it made you feel like, you know what, as long as they win, they're at least going to be in the conversation. Clearly, they
Right.
still need stuff to happen, but yeah, last night was encouraging.
Yeah, it was. It just seemed like the path cleared up a little bit more. You were able to see. I mean, Bama's still got to play Georgia. Ohio
Mhm.
State still, has a hard time down the stretch. Still got Michigan State, Michigan at the end of
Yeah.
the year. So it showed me hope. It gave me a lot of hope as a Bearcats fan. But something that did not give me any hope at all was Sunday. The Browns absolutely decimated the Bengals inside of Paul Brown Stadium. The amount of grown men that were barking in my face was rage inducing. It was horrible. And being in the Stripe Squad, I got the signs everywhere.
Yeah.
So everybody's like, "Give me the sign." Yeah, I hated it. I hated it. So obviously, there's a lot of blame to be passed around. But who do you think deserves the most of the blame here from that Bengals loss?
you know, um, I'll start with Joe Burrow because
Mhm.
it felt to me like the tone was set with that pick six that
Yep.
Denzel Ward took 99 yards. And I know the Bengals came back and scored the following drive, but he's made some decisions this year. We all love Joe. Joe
Right.
Burrow is going to be a phenomenal NFL quarterback, and he's going to win a lot of games in Cincinnati. I believe that the day they drafted him, and I believe that today. This
Mhm.
is not a statement about, well, they have the wrong guy or should they have taken Herbert. It's he played a bad game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this team is probably not good enough against decent opposition, is probably not good enough to overcome that. Their
Yeah.
defense was due to regress a little bit. And the talent level still needs to be worked on this offseason. So how do you rise above it? Your quarterback elevates you. And Joe on Sunday did the exact opposite. And that's been a theme over the first 9 games. And sometimes they've been able to overcome it, sometimes not so much. But there have been, a handful of picks this year, a handful of decisions where it's felt like either he forced a ball to a place it should have been forced to, or just made a decision that you really can't explain. And part of that might be the process. That might be part of the process of, just sort of evolving into the role that we all want to see him move into. But yeah, if I look at that game on Sunday, the defense was not very good. Nobody was very good. Jamar Chase with a drop, T. Higgins with a drop. I mean, those things all add up.
Right.
But Joe was subpar by the standard that we hold him up to. He was subpar, and this team is not good enough on a consistent basis to overcome that.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. It's just because we're critiquing him doesn't mean we don't think he's not gonna be the savior of the franchise. We all believe that, but
Right.
when he's making those mistakes, it's fair to critique him.
He had a
And
bad
when
game.
Yeah.
He'd be the
Yeah,
first one
right,
to tell you he had a
exactly.
bad game.
He
It
had a bad
happens.
game.
It doesn't. Everybody's going to have a bad game.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, this team is probably not good enough, and the Browns played well enough that it was going to be impossible for the Bengals to overcome it.
absolutely. So let's stay on the topic of Joe Burrow. So, I mean, something that I've noticed and something that I really love about Joe is that he likes to take shots. He loves to maybe fit into a tight window or throw the deep ball that maybe isn't quite there. And, we have the athletes to do it. We have completed Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins. But when they're not, it's burning him. So now he's tied for the league high in interceptions with 11. Do you see the interception rate continuing after this bye week and going into Las Vegas and the rest of the season? Do you think
No, my
this?
guess is, this to me, even before he got hurt last year, this was, I think, that the pivotal juncture that a lot of us had circled. The second half of his second year,
Mm,
where, all right, he's taken enough NFL snaps that he has seen essentially every kind of defense you could see. He's comfortable in the offense. He's developed chemistry with the guys they feel like are going to be the core pieces. He's gotten used to working behind this offensive line, whatever it is. And so it's the second half of that second season. I say this unscientifically because it's not like I've gone back and looked at, every great quarterback, how they did over the final 8 or 9 games of their second year. But this always to me felt like the time where you expected him to take his play to another level. And that doesn't mean
mm,
he's going to be the best QB in the league. That doesn't mean he's not going to make mistakes. But if we want to chalk up some of the issues we saw with the picks over the first half of the season to inexperience, okay, let's see how he learns from those mistakes and builds upon that experience. And I think we're going to see good things from him. The question is, how much does that get offset by this team maybe not being as healthy in the second half of the season as it was in the first half? Because the frustrating thing to me about the last 2 weeks is you got to win games while you're healthy, and they
right.
didn't do that. How much does that get offset by the defense regressing to a
Mm,
degree? How much does that get offset by, just the quality of the opponents they may play over the second half of the season? But yeah, I mean, this to me has always been the period of time where you're like, all right, the second half of Joe's second season is when we want to see him take a major step forward. And I think he can. But that starts with eliminating some of the head scratching mistakes we've seen this year. I mean, when he threw the pick early in overtime against the Packers, you were like,
yeah,
what was he thinking?
right.
Or the pick against the Jets. And I know the play was, basically you're going one way, he turns the other way. There's going to be an unblocked guy. Joe gave him the ball. I mean, a couple of the picks against the Bears, um, they looked like mental mistakes more than physical mistakes.
Mm,
And look, sometimes a guy's just going to make a great play on the ball. And Ward did that on Sunday. But there have been a lot of picks we're just watching in real time that the millisecond he lets it go, you're like, dude, what are you doing? And I hope and I think we're going to see fewer of those over the final half of this season.
Right, and I think you bring up a great point. It's just this team isn't good enough around him to where Joe Burrow can have that bad game. Joe Burrow it needs to be there to elevate everybody else. So, in one part that has been saving Joe Burrow's ass over this year has been the running defense. And I thought going up into this game, the running defense was probably one of, if not the best part about this Bengals team. But they looked terrible against Nick Chubb, and they looked terrible against Brown's offense. And granted, Nick Chubb's a beast. He's one of the best
Right.
backs in the league. But you can't be having that in the division in your own house when that's the best part of your team. Why do you
Yeah.
think the
Go
running
ahead.
defense was so bad? Was it the playing? Was it the actual execution, or do you think it was scheme fit, or do you think it was a little bit of both?
I just think they got out toughed and they got out executed. I know those things are sort of cliche to say, but I don't know that they changed from a schematic standpoint, really adjusted all that much from what they had done earlier in the season. And they also went up against a team that emphasizes running the football. I
Right.
mean, the Browns, when Kevin Stefanski showed up last year, we're taking the ball away from Baker Mayfield and we're going to give it to these stud running backs. They can do that against a lot of people.
Mm,
And they did it against a defense that top to bottom, I think had overachieved early in the season, and that is to their credit. B, there's not a true difference maker on this defense. Maybe it's
mm,
supposed to be Jesse Bates. We really haven't seen that this year. Their interior, their defensive line is better. But
mm,
there's not a guy that I think an opposing offensive coordinator sits down on Monday night and says, all right, we got to keep that guy from screwing up everything we're going to do.
right.
And so I think that kind of played itself out a little bit on Sunday to a degree. But you moving forward, what does this run defense look like? And did the Browns do things that other teams feel like they can borrow from and apply moving forward?
Right. Yeah. And, this game, I mean, it's coming off of a really, really bad Jets loss, and you could tell the Bengals fan base was feeling it. So we've been 0-2 in the past 2 weeks, both really bad losses. One of them we should have definitely had leading by 11 and with 7 minutes left against the Jets, and then this one was just an absolute ass kicking. Uh, but do you believe it's unfair to judge this Bengals team based off of what they've done the past 2 weeks? Because the 7 weeks prior, they've been exceeding expectation and they've been doing really well.
I think it's what are you judging? Are you judging whether the franchise is moving in the right direction? I don't know how 2 losses would make you change your mind. Is it,
Mm.
you know what? Let's reassess their playoff chances. I think that's fair. Just the mathematics of it, right? They're
Yeah,
5-4, so is like half of the conference.
right.
They were sitting there in the number 1 seed in the AFC, and I think if we use tiebreakers, they're now 10th. They're
Mm,
last place in their own division. So the math has changed, and when math changes, um, the probability of certain outcomes change. So I think if you 2 weeks ago were like, you know what, division favorite, they're going to the postseason, they could win a postseason game.
mm,
Well,
right.
those things can still happen, and frankly, I still believe they will happen.
Mm,
But you're being fair if you go, well, wait a minute, because you blew the. And to me, the bigger deal was blowing the game to the Jets, because I could look
yeah,
at that Browns game and said, bad 60 minutes. Nobody played well. It happens. The Jets game was won. You're up 11
right.
points, 6 and change to go. It's Mike
Mm,
White. You're supposed to win that game. I think if you look though and go, okay, well, at 5-4, I don't feel as good as I did at 5-2. And man, if they go to Vegas and lay an egg, now 5-5, where are the wins going to come from if they've got to get to 10 wins? I think that's completely fair. I think if 2 weeks ago, though, you thought, you know what, things are really moving in the right direction towards something bigger and better in 2022 and beyond, I don't know why you still wouldn't feel that way. This season was, when they were 5-2 and we were talking about them maybe winning the division, that meant they were going to skip a step. And the step they were going to skip was improve in the win-loss column, but understand there's still going to be some growing pains. To me, that's what the last 2 weeks to a degree have reflected. I'm not making excuses for them, but
yeah,
again, if 2 weeks ago you felt like, you know what, this team's trajectory is pointed in the right direction, big picture, I think it still is. If 2 weeks
yeah,
ago you went into that Jets game thinking we win this game 6-2 and we're going to run away with the division, well, clearly now they're not. So that very understandable if you change your perspective based on what's happened over the last 2 games.
right. Yeah. I think you're being totally fair. And I think you got to throw in expectation too, because at the
Sure.
expectation at the beginning of the year, it was, my expectation was, yeah, if I think we can do 10-7 at ceiling. And then a lot of people were
Mm-hmm.
calling 7-10. And now we get it to 5-2. Now we're calling 11, 12, 13 wins. And then now, right back to here, people are like, oh, can we even make the playoffs? So, I mean, you're right. Yeah, but you're being completely fair if you're thinking both ways. So we have a question from the comments here. This is Russ Blackthorn. He's my dude. He said, I have a question for both of you. Do you think Burrow is too relaxed about the losing streak? Does he need to have a little more sense of urgency, or is he just fine as it is? And I've seen that question pop up a lot on Twitter, and I want to get your honest opinion on that question. Do you think there's not enough urgency from Joe, or do you think this is the mentality that he needs to have?
I think he is by nature sort of a relaxed, hey, don't worry about it kind of guy publicly. I I don't think you can accomplish what he's accomplished without understanding the stakes in certain situations. So
Mm,
look, I mean, he's very aware of the franchise's history. He's very aware of I think what outsiders will say at the first sign of trouble. And I think there's something to be said about exuding some degree of calm. And I think calm can sometimes be mistaken for a lack of urgency. Um, I would be willing to bet that behind closed doors, Joe is full throttle in terms of preparation, leadership. But, I do think there's something about not panicking, is
mm,
say what you want about Aaron Rodgers, but he was the guy that spelled the word relax a couple of years ago for the Packers after he and his team had, so many struggles. I think there's something to be said about a leader exuding some degree of calm, and that reflects confidence. But, you know, uh, this is a guy who's won a national championship. I mean, he's aware of what this team has in front of it. I don't know if it's on his behalf a lack of urgency. Now, I've wondered that about the Bengals before, but I don't. I just think they got outplayed, and he's trying to give off the vibe of, hey, it happened, and we're going to move on from it. Don't worry about it. I don't know that
mm.
that's a lack of urgency as much as it is just his general nature. and trying to impart some sense of calm on his teammates and outsiders as well.
Right, yeah, and I think it's more towards that. It's that sense of calm that he can bring over this team that we're not panicking. We got a long way to go. There's a lot. Everything is still right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
All those expectations that we had 2 weeks ago are still there. Let's talk
Sure.
about that. You got 6 of your 8 remaining games are going to be at home. You have the Stripe Squad behind you. How do you not have the confidence? So you have that. You're 2-1 in the division. Those two division wins are at Pittsburgh and at Baltimore. But from just reading Twitter and just following Bengals fans, you would think the state of Ohio is on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think fans are so quick to jump off of the Bengal bandwagon?
I just think number one, I think that is a social media thing as much as anything else, and number two, I just think that's the way people do things now. I mean,
Yep.
we're Bearcat fans, right?
Oh yeah.
After each of the last 3 games, I've been told they're going to fall out of the top 10.
Mhm.
Season's going to be a failure. This is a loss, and yet those same people come back the following Saturday. So
Right.
I feel like that's sort of reflective of just how we consume things. But then you add to it the franchise's history.
Hmm.
Um, Bengals fans, understandably so, are conditioned to expect the other shoe to drop. You're always sort of looking over your shoulder, like, all right, what's behind us? What's going to happen? You expect the worst. And that's why, I think ultimately at the end of the day, that's what Joe Burrow was brought here to do, right? To
Right.
get us to eventually start thinking differently about the Cincinnati Bengals and not always expecting the worst. But that's not going to come without some sort of breakthrough success, and that's going to involve more than just a 5-2 start. When you've been through the ringer with this team, and every time you get excited about something, there are cold doses of reality thrown at you. At some point, you get apprehensive and you get wary, and you start to expect the worst thing to happen. But I do think if you look at it rationally, um, Sunday was their first just top to bottom bad performance.
Right.
The offense was bad against the Bears, but the defense played pretty well.
Mm.
They missed some kicks against the Green Bay Packers and blew some opportunities on offense, but I don't think you walked away from that game going, boy, they played awfully.
Right.
Even the Jets game, I mean, offensively, they scored 31 points. The game against the Browns was the first time that they laid a complete and total collective team-wide stinker.
Right.
So, all right, I'll give you one of those. You got to beat the Jets when you're up by 11 points late. But,
Yep.
it's cliche to say, but if I would have said to you in August, through 9 games, they're going to be 5-4, and they'll go into their bye healthy. And they'll have wins in their back pocket against the Steelers and against the Ravens on the road. They will have won a game in prime time. I think most of us would have taken that and said, I'll take my chances with the second half of the season. So here
Yep.
we are. They're 5-4. Let's take their chances with the second half of the season.
Right, yeah, and I think a lot of it is coming from where these losses came from. I know every single Cincinnati Bengals fan doesn't want to get beat by the Browns, let alone at home, let
Right.
alone exactly like that. So that's probably where a lot of this jumping ship is coming from. But as someone that is in Cincinnati and been a fan of Cincinnati sports my entire life, I have nothing but have to be optimistic because if I'm pessimistic, I'm just going to be in a constant state of depression. So I have to be optimistic with these teams, and you know it too. I think this team can go 6-2 down the stretch. I think they can dominate and get back to where they were that 5-2 record. I see it with this team. What do you think the Bengals are going to do down this remaining stretch?
My guess is they finish 4-4 and go 9-8. And,
Mm.
I mean, is that going to be good enough to get him to the postseason? I think it's possible. Just, I don't know how many of these teams get to 10 wins,
Mhm. Right.
So then it's going to come down to things like tiebreakers and stuff like that and the weirdness of a 17-game season. I'll put it to you this way. If they beat the Las Vegas Raiders, I think they get to 10 wins. If they lose to the Las Vegas Raiders, I think they're stuck at 9 wins. And that's, again, before the season, they're going to increase their win total by more than double. You would have taken that. But
Yes.
relative to where they were at 5-2, I think this game against Vegas is huge.
Mhm.
That Las Vegas team has had 1,000 things happen around it. tragic and otherwise.
Yeah.
But they've played better this year than people have expected them to. And Derek Carr's, I think, a better quarterback than people have at times given him credit for.
Right.
2 weeks to prepare. I mean, I at face value, I look at the remaining 8 games and I go, well, they finished 4-4. At the same time, the team that I watched for most of the first 9 weeks is an above 500 team, is a quality team, doesn't have a lot of weaknesses.
Right.
So I'll amend it. I say they go 5-3 and they'll finish with 10 wins.
Okay, well there you go. 5-3, finish with
Just
10
talked
wins.
myself
That's
into
good.
it on the fly.
Yes,
How about that?
yes.
Sure.
Come on, young Mo.
Yeah.
Join the optimism. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Because I've been here. I heard you on Monday. You're like 4-4 down the stretch. You heard my heart here.
Yeah.
All right, got you to 10 wins. There we go.
Got me to 10 wins. There, I did it.
There we go. I'll call James. I'll make sure he knows.
Make sure he knows.
So did you happen to see on Twitter what happened when the clown from Cleveland decided to do one of the biggest no-nos on Twitter is attack a part of the Bengals, nation. What did you make of that whole entire situation?
Well, I found it and I retweeted it. And I included a picture of 3 Cleveland Browns fans with their face painted dog bone hats, and one guy's eating Alpo. So it's just rich with irony that I think that the NFL franchise that you most associate with fans doing overboard stuff, harmless stuff, unless you're throwing stuff at people, is the Cleveland Browns. And so this guy, and I don't know who he is, I don't know anything about him, but this guy's been in Cleveland all this time, been covering the Browns all this time, been ostensibly a Browns fan before, and has never saw somebody eating a dog biscuit with a dog mask or their face painted like a dog and hasn't done the exact same thing. Would he be willing to do that about a fan in Cleveland? I get how it works. Somebody does something like that, like the Tony the Tiger guy, and he's obviously, okay with getting attention, and you give it to him and everybody sort of laughs and pokes at him. That's fine. He's not harming anybody by painting his face. No. He's not ruining anybody else's experience. So what do you care? But it was rich with irony to me that here's a guy from Cleveland where they eat dog food and where they paint their faces like, pit bulls and German shepherds or whatever, and
bark at grown men.
And he's taking a shot at a guy in Cincinnati doing something similar, harmless, but similar. I thought that was interesting. And I wonder how many times he has pointed out somebody in Cleveland doing something comparable to this guy, because my guess is the reaction of the folks in Cleveland would have been similar to the reaction of the folks here about what he did to the guy who's a Bengals fan.
Right. Yeah. And it was so great to see like the entirety of it's almost like taking a positive out of a massive negative from Sunday. It's just the unity and the come back together. And I think this new age of Bengals fan, that's kind of what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of belief and hope in this team. So, I mean, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I just, if somebody's not harming somebody else, what do I care about how they dress? Things to worry about in my life.
Right. So. Right. Yeah. There's too much other stuff going on. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I just want to finish off with a lighter note. I want to go back to the Bearcats here. I mean, obviously College game day on Saturday. It was absolutely incredible. I was out there at 4:30 in the morning, and the line from Mick was all the way backed up to Nippert Stadium at that time in the bitter cold, and it was incredible. How did you experience game day? Were you out there with me, or were you watching from the cozy?
No, so I went on Friday, and I took in some of the scene on Friday. I went to game day in Orlando in 2018 when UC was there, so I've had a chance to watch the show get executed, and that was really cool. I wanted to see how it looked on television. I also had somewhere I had to be Saturday morning, which precluded me from going down there. But I wanted to, it was the first time. I'm probably like most, like Saturday morning game day is on at my house, but I haven't sat down and watched College game day for 3 hours since I was probably in college. I got stuff going on Saturday morning. Usually Saturdays are all about football and the Bearcats and whatever. So I'm trying to get stuff done, but it's always on. It's the first time that I've sat down and watched the show. And I also wanted to have a frame of reference that was similar to most people, and most people watched it on TV, and it was awesome. It was the Jesus signs kept multiplying
Yeah,
on.
where'd that come from?
Well, I don't know what that's all about. I guess I
Yeah,
do know what that's all about, but it just was a great advertisement for the city, for the school, for the program. Nobody embarrassed themselves. I even
mhm.
thought, as much as a lot of us rolled our eyes about Nick Lachey,
Yeah.
you can tell he pays attention to college football because I've
Yeah.
watched that show enough where they get some celebrity who, they have no idea what's going. You can tell Nick Lachey does pay
Oh, yeah.
attention to college football, which I
Right.
appreciated. And look, there are worse ambassadors for your city. I
Mm,
mean, the dude,
correct.
I think most people have no idea why he's famous, but he's not infamous. And
Mhm.
that's a good thing. But yeah, I having watched it on TV, it was it was really, really cool. And having gone down on Friday and seeing all the excitement that people had for the set being built and all that stuff was cool. And what I hated about the game on Saturday is that the way it ended, for a
Mhm.
lot of people, it didn't punctuate this awesome day. It was
Right.
a downer. And I just
Mhm.
I understand the concerns about how every game's going to affect their ranking, but I don't understand consuming this team that way.
Yeah, right. And just if you're gonna if my thing is I played football pretty much all the way through high school, and something that I always been harped on is, man, winning is hard. Winning is hard in
Yes,
football. That's why the Bearcats are one of four teams of 126 that are still undefeated.
I
That's how
talked.
hard winning is.
Yeah, I go down on Tuesdays and I talk with players for the pregame show on Saturday, and I chatted with Michael Young because I wanted to talk about what it was like to catch a touchdown pass while laying on your back. And I asked him, I go, are you guys starting to feel the pressure of not just having to win every game, but blow everybody out and you've got to be
Mhm.
perfect? And he's like, I don't think people realize how hard it is to win. I don't think people realize, regardless of who you're playing, how hard it is to get away with a win. And
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think I've been a fan of this program since I was 15 years old. I'm not going to take a 9-0 season for granted. I'm not going to take having them in this conversation of the college football playoff. I'm not going to take that for granted. And I hope the players are enjoying what they're doing and not being burdened by, oh, we didn't win by enough, or oh, what's
Right.
the committee going to do? At the end of the day, those things do matter, but at the end of the day, they shouldn't compromise the enjoyment of something that is hard to accomplish and that this team so far has accomplished.
Right. Yeah. I think you're 100% right. You keep picking apart those wins, then eventually you're just going to stop enjoying the season. And
Hmm.
that makes total sense. Well, Mo, I know you got a busy schedule. I know you got a lot going on. You're already in the studio ready to go. Can't wait to listen to you later. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I can see you really soon. Are you going to the game on Saturday? The basketball game?
No, it's my wife's 40th birthday. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I was hoping that would be a day game, but I promised her we would all go out. So I'm going to miss the Georgia game. In 22 years, I've missed 6 home games.
Wow.
6.
That's very
This will
impressive.
be number
That's,
7. It's going to break my heart. And
I
especially
hate
after the way they played, I was so
great.
thrilled with how they played. Like, I'm like, usually game number 2, you're like, this is not going to be watchable.
Hmm.
I want to watch this team some more. So unfortunately, I won't be there.
I hate that for you, man. I really
I know
do.
it sucks.
All right, everybody, Mo Egger, ESPN 1530. Go follow him on Twitter at Mo Egger. It's just that simple. Mo, thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
Okay, Josh, anytime, man. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. All right, that was Mo Egger, ESPN 1530. Uh, Absolutely great guy, super nice. He doesn't look at himself as somebody that is famous in the Cincinnati area. To me, he is. To me, he really is, and he's someone that I've really modeled a lot of my podcast voice off of, and a lot of my, sort of prowess, I guess, off of him, and so he's one of the reasons why I've gotten into the podcasting game. I've been listening to him pretty much ever since he started in Cincinnati, and and it was great to have him on. So hopefully we'll get him on again real soon. Again, so we got a lot going on today at 5:30, going on with Strawberry Ice a little bit later. We're going to talk about Bengals, Bearcats, all that situation. Then we're going to, after that, we have the college football playoff ranking show with me and Brian Miller tonight at 7:45. So be there. We're going to talk about how the Bearcats can get in, what this new ranking means, and just pretty much everything around college football in general. If you are looking to read something, especially about this weekend, which was absolutely magical, going from, excuse me, not even magical. I would say you started off at the peak at college game day and how we just spiraled downward to end it on Sunday. That is going to be up live on fansided.com. Please, please, please go read it. It means a lot to me, and it really boosts the numbers and it really helps out. Share it, read it, do everything you can for it. All right, guys, that's going to be my time. I'm going to see you tomorrow. We'll talk about what this buy means, what the Bengals need to do. A quick news update: Chidobe Awuzie just got contacted. He is going to be put on the COVID list. Thank God it's coming into the bye. So there's hope that he'll play in Vegas, but we don't exactly know. So we'll go from there. We'll talk tomorrow. All right. Thank you all so much for coming on and listening. And I got another shout out to Russ Blackthorn. That dude is literally got to be my number one fan. I love this guy. He's always on and he's always talking. And I'll be sure to listen. He'll probably be on for Strawberry Ice later. So if you don't follow Russ Blackthorn, go follow him right now. All right, guys. Thank you all so much. Bye. Peace.